The city is silent now. Marble columns lie broken like the ribs of a fallen god. Ash coats the mosaic floors where philosophers once walked, where generals once argued, where ambition once shimmered like gold in torchlight. The air smells not of smoke, but of something older, memory turned to stone. We do not begin with a date. We begin with a feeling, the quiet that follows collapse. Somewhere beneath the ruins, a voice speaks, not loud, not urgent, but deliberate, measured, as if chiseling words into granite. What made war inevitable, it says, was the growth of Athenian power and the fear which this caused in Sparta. It is Thucydides, not the historian but the mourner, the analyst of doom, a man who did not merely witness war, but who listened to its breath, tracked its pulse, and named its nature. In this tale there are no villains, only patterns. Athens rises, glorious, curious, relentless. Sparta watches, grim, unyielding, ancient. Their clash is not a matter of choice. It is a matter of gravity. One ascends, the other braces. One dreams forward, the other holds the line. And between them a silence fills, not of peace, but of pressure. We are not here to recount battles. We are here to excavate the architecture of conflict, the unseen scaffolding that holds history in place long before the walls crack. To understand the war, you must understand the tension beneath stone, the whispers behind the oaths, the chill before the flame. This is not just about Greece. It is about all empires, all ambitions, all fears that dress themselves as strategy. We begin in the ash, because only from the ash can one see the fire that built it, and only from the marble, shattered but not erased, can we listen to what still echoes. Let us walk, then, through the ruins, not with nostalgia, but with reverence and clarity, because the city may have fallen, but the pattern remains. Fear in the world of Thucydides is not a scream. It is a structure. It creeps not with sound, but with symmetry. It coils itself in logic, not panic. It does not wail, it calculates. Sparta did not rage against Athens. Sparta measured, watched, ran fingers across the edge of a growing shadow and asked, not, "Is it dangerous?" but "How long before it reaches us?" Fear in this world is cold, strategic. It does not announce itself with terror, but with timing. When Athens built ships, Sparta counted harbors. When Athens gained allies, Sparta mapped fault lines. When Athens flourished in speech and stone and coin, Sparta asked the oldest question of all. If not stopped, then what? The human mind, when cornered, does not default to generosity. It defaults to geometry. It sees expansion as encroachment, growth as threat. It does not wait to be touched. It prepares to strike once breath is felt too close. That is how fear lives in empires, not in the hearts of the many, but in the calculations of the few, in war councils and behind cloaks, in half-sentences whispered to generals, in maps updated at midnight. And the greatest irony? It is not the weak who fear. It is the powerful, because only the powerful have something to lose. Something so vast, so structural, so invisible that it cannot be risked. So fear becomes a mirror, not of what the enemy is doing, but of what you think they could do. A mirror that shows not today, but the tomorrow you dread. Thucydides understood this. He did not say Sparta was right. He said Sparta was reacting to a silhouette cast too long across its wall. And in that silhouette, all empires glimpse their fate. The shape of fear, then, is the shape of a shadow, cast not by monsters, but by mirrors. Let us trace its edge, not with trembling hands, but with the calm of understanding. Because to name fear is not to banish it, but it is the beginning of not being ruled by it. If fear is a mirror, then honor is a flame. It burns not because it must, but because it was lit long ago by hands no longer remembered. For the Greeks, and especially for the Athenians, honor was not a sentiment. It was a scaffolding, a visible public shape to a man's worth, to a city's soul, to a generation's memory. Athens did not build for necessity. It built for glory. It did not sail to survive. It sailed to be seen. Its democracy was loud, not just in function, but in spectacle. Its victories were etched into stone, paraded through festivals, sung by poets. To retreat, to concede, to shrink from challenge. This was not strategy. This was erasure. Thucydides saw this too. He documented Pericles' funeral oration not merely as a eulogy, but as a monument to the Athenian mind. Defiant, radiant, addicted to honor. A people who equated virtue with visibility, who feared obscurity more than death. And so when Sparta loomed, Athens did not yield. It expanded, not always wisely, not always rightly, but necessarily, for to do otherwise would be to betray its very image. This is the tragedy. Not that Athens sought war, but that it could not imagine choosing less. To preserve its honor, it risked its life, and in so doing it stepped into a fire it had long admired from afar. Honor then becomes a weight, beautiful but unyielding, a crown made of iron and ideals, and those who wear it walk taller, yes, but they also walk into storms. Let us hold this thought, heavy as it is, because in the next breath we will confront the third pull in Thucydides' triangle, interest. And interest, unlike fear or honor, wears no mask. It does not burn or reflect. It simply moves, quietly, inevitably. If fear is what empires anticipate, and honor is what they protect, then interest is what they pursue. But unlike the former, interest rarely shouts. It whispers. It does not wear armor or laurels. It wears numbers, trade routes, treaties, fortresses constructed not with pride but with quiet purpose. It moves beneath the visible, slow, steady, territorial. It says not I must, but I can. Thucydides understood this current best of all. He saw how the ambitions of states often disguise themselves in necessity. The Delian League began as mutual defense, but it ended as tribute, as empire. Athens did not wake up one day and announce its dominance. It arrived incrementally, logically, through decisions that each made sense in the moment, and together formed a noose. This is the true trap. Interest feels neutral, rational, safe. It convinces its host that power is just a means, not a desire, that actions are responses, not provocations, but slowly, imperceptibly, interest expands its circle, until one day it touches the boundary of another empire, and then it becomes a spark. Sparta did not react to a single act of aggression. It reacted to a pattern of interest, a creeping tide of influence, alliances, colonies, coin. What looked like security to Athens looked like encirclement to Sparta. And the tragedy, both were right. Interest does not care for morality. It does not ask permission. It does not believe in enough. It is the logic of the river that cuts through rock, not because it is angry, but because it flows. In the triangle of fear, honor, and interest, this is the most deceptive point, because it hides in reason. And it is reason, unchecked, unexamined, that builds the road to war. Let us pause here. Let us stare into this quiet force, because in understanding it, we begin to understand how even the most peaceful path, left unguarded, can become a march. Thucydides did not write of free men making free choices. He wrote of men acting within structures they barely saw. The Peloponnesian War, as he framed it, was not born from madness nor from malice. It was born from motion, predictable motion. Fear rises, honor hardens, interest expands. and suddenly the future narrows. To imagine this war as a series of miscalculations is to miss its essence. It was, instead, an unveiling. Each city-state was following its logic to the end, the logic of survival cloaked in ideals. The speeches that thunder through Thucydides' text are not just rhetoric, they are rituals. They reveal the self-justifying machinery of power. Each voice sounds different: Corinth, Sparta, Athens, and yet they all speak from the same stage. We must act because not acting is death. Herein lies the cruelty. Belief and compulsion blur. Athens believes in freedom, so it conquers. Sparta believes in stability, so it strikes. The gods are invoked, but the laws that govern the stage are not divine. They are structural. Of the gods we believe, Thucydides writes, and of men we know, that by a necessary law of their nature they rule wherever they can. This is not cynicism, it is anatomy, a diagnosis of a species that confuses agency with inertia. These were not villains, only sleepwalkers, not tyrants, but executors of imperatives too old to question. Let us not condemn them, let us recognize them, for in doing so we might begin to trace the machinery in our own hands. The gears we still pretend are switches, because this is the hidden core of Thucydides. He does not warn, he reveals. And what he reveals is not how we fall, but how we were always already falling, even as we climbed. Every empire believes it can steer the storm, that it can bend tides with treaties, tame rivals with diplomacy, and deflect consequences with rhetoric. But Thucydides writes in a language more ancient than hope. He does not offer reassurance, only recognition. And what we recognize, if we dare, is this: that power is not controlled, it is ridden, like a wave too large to shape. You balance, you guide, you never command. Athens thought it could expand strategically, just far enough to remain safe. Sparta thought it could wait, just long enough to avoid confrontation. But power is not surgical. It spreads unevenly, like fire through dry grass. Plans collapse not from failure, but from momentum. The fiction of control is comforting. It lets us believe we are authors, but Thucydides shows us we are often characters, swept into plot lines written by accumulated actions, by structures of fear, honor, interest, by the inertia of prior decisions. The Athenian tragedy, then, is not hubris alone. It is calculation mistaken for control, logic mistaken for immunity. And once the war began, even Pericles, its most eloquent mind, could not stop what had been set in motion. The lesson is hard, but necessary. Control, as we imagine it, is a myth. What we have, if we are lucky, is influence, and what we must cultivate, if we are wise, is foresight, not to dominate the future, but to understand when we are nearing the edge. And that edge? It is not marked by trumpet or torch. It is marked by quiet, by the slowing of breath before the plunge, by the stillness that precedes descent. Empires do not fall with noise alone. They fall with silence mistaken for stability. Thucydides invites us to examine that silence, to read it as prelude, not peace. He knew, as only those who have watched cities crumble can know, that the moment just before collapse is often the moment most celebrated, the moment of pride, of confidence, of declared control. That is when the fiction tightens. So let us not walk past this chapter too quickly. Let us sit with the discomfort, with the realization that perhaps control has never been real, only the illusion that we needed to move forward. And now, perhaps, it is time to move forward with eyes open, not for control, but for understanding. Because only then can we begin to ask the real question. Not how do we prevent war, but how do we stop becoming the kind of people who make it inevitable? By now, it should be clear, Thucydides did not chart the Peloponnesian War to warn us about history. He wrote it to reveal us to ourselves. What made war inevitable? Not one act, not one speech, not one treaty broken or boundary crossed, but a series of small affirmations, of fear justified, honor defended, interest pursued, each building upon the last until no other outcome felt imaginable. This is the weight of inevitability, not that it arrives like fate, but that it accumulates like dust, subtle, silent, and suffocating. And yet, even in its inevitability, the war was not meaningless. It exposed the layers beneath the surface, the true beliefs of cities, the fractures beneath alliances, the mask behind ideals. It forced every participant to become what they claimed or be broken by their own contradiction. Sparta became the guardian of tradition, even as it adopted foreign tactics. Athens became the herald of liberty, even as it ruled through coercion. The war was not just a conflict. It was a reckoning, a slow erosion of illusions until all that remained was will, fire, and consequence. Thucydides does not let us look away. He gives us no heroes to cheer, no villains to scorn, only choices made in context and the collapse that followed. In this way, his history is more mirror than map. So what then do we do with inevitability? Do we accept it as law? Or do we dare to pause the pattern, not by denying fear, honor, or interest, but by understanding the forms they take before they harden into doctrine? Because if war is inevitable, then so is our chance to recognize it, to name the machinery before it becomes monstrous, to see in our own age the echoes of theirs, and to ask, are we walking forward with memory in our hands, or are we sleepwalking into another silence, one that will write its own Thucydides to explain what we refuse to see? We have come far from Athens and Sparta. Our cities glow not with torches, but with the pale fire of screens. Our declarations are broadcast, our ambitions coded in policy, our fears concealed in market movements and military budgets. And yet, the pattern remains. Thucydides did not describe a moment. He uncovered a mechanism, and that mechanism still runs, through capitals and corporations, through alliances and arms deals, through the language of national interest and the rituals of security. Look around. One power rises, another recalibrates. Each decision is framed as necessity, each gesture defensive, each escalation regrettable but unavoidable. And so it builds, quietly, logically, inevitably. We tell ourselves we are more enlightened, that we understand history, that we have constructed institutions meant to prevent repetition. But the shadow of Thucydides stretches long. Because his truth was never about names or nations, it was about the human condition under pressure. Do we still believe in diplomacy, or do we merely perform it to delay confrontation? Do we speak of peace while nurturing weapons? Do we teach history, or do we reenact it with better technology? The trap is not in the past, it is under our feet. And perhaps the final cruelty is this: Thucydides did not write with hope. He wrote with clarity, not to prevent repetition, but to make us conscious when we repeat. That is his gift and his warning. So as we gaze into the mirror of modernity, we must ask, not if we are like them, but when. Not if the trap will close, but where the hinges already creak. Because the gods may not guide us, but our nature does. The story does not close with a moral. Thucydides does not leave us with comfort or prescription. He offers no redemption, no roadmap out of the trap. And that perhaps is what makes his work endure. It is not a lesson, it is a mirror, and we are still standing before it. We want to believe that insight leads to immunity, that to study war is to avoid it. But the truth is darker. To study war is to recognize how easily we return to it, how habit, interest, and fear are braided into the very structure of our ambitions. Thucydides does not ask us to stop being who we are. He asks us to see who we are, without adornment, without excuse. And once we see, we are faced with the only question that matters. Not what should we do, but who must we become? Can we build a politics not anchored in spectacle? Can we teach ambition to kneel before restraint? Can we remind power that it exists only by the consent of its consequences? These are not questions for the powerful alone. They are questions for all who live within a system that rewards dominance, punishes humility, and forgets history until it becomes prophecy. So here, at the edge of our own epoch, we return to the Ancient One, to a voice carved not in marble but in warning. Thucydides does not speak loudly, but if you listen, truly listen, you may hear what the future already whispers. You have been here before, and the next chapter will not be written by the brave nor the wise, but by those who noticed the trap and still kept walking. So pause, not to despair, but to choose. Because in that pause, in that rarest of moments where recognition holds the pen, there is the faintest chance of rewriting the ending.